I'm going to give it just another minute or two until we hear from Director Perry, and we'll see if we can give everybody a chance to get on that wants to join us.
We apologize for the delay. We are just making sure that we have the right links out there for people to get in. So just bear with us a few more minutes here.
Okay, it sounds like we are ready to go. I'd like to welcome everyone to our referendum overview tonight for the Stillwater Area Public Schools. We're excited to try this and see how this goes. Tonight we have from 6 o'clock until 7. The first half an hour will be an overview of our levy information, and then we'll be able to take some questions after that. We did put out a form where people could submit questions beforehand, and we'll have Carissa Keister be our moderator and feed us the questions at the end. I'd like to first go through some quick introductions. I'm Melinda Lansfeld, the superintendent of Stillwater, and we'll just go ahead and Jennifer, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Melinda. Yes, I'm Jennifer Cherry. I'm the assistant superintendent here in Stillwater Area Public Schools. Happy to be here tonight. Thank
you. John?
Yeah, I'm John Perry. I'm the director of learning technology for the district, and I'm also happy to be here tonight.
And John, number 2. Oh, you're on mute. Still on mute.
One more time.
There we go.
I'm going to do it now.
Perfect.
Good evening. I'm John Tyne, and I'm glad you're joining us tonight.
Okay, and then Carissa.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, so this referendum, we have a vote on November 2nd. That's coming up in just a couple of weeks. And as I said earlier, this is to inform and educate our community. This is a community decision ahead of us. We do have open voting that's available now, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But this is our kids, our community, and our future. And with that, I believe we have a short little video that we'll kick this off with.
We've all had a phone that was once cutting edge, but over time, that phone starts to show its age. New software won't run as smoothly, or at all. Parts for repairs are hard to come by. And because of rising costs, you can't get the same amount of phone for the same price you did years ago. In Stillwater Area Public Schools, our operating levy is 8 years old and is expiring. If it expires, we wouldn't just have an out-of-date levy, we'd have no levy at all. Much like an old phone, our operating levy needs an upgrade to support quality learning for our students. On November 2nd, Stillwater Area Public Schools will ask the community to vote on a 2-question referendum. Question 1 would replace our expiring operating levy. Question 2 would provide the district its first ever technology levy. An expiring levy may be like an old phone, but the district is full of actual out-of-date and barely functioning devices that need to be upgraded. The pandemic has had a big impact on teaching and learning. The district received one-time COVID funds to start updating our technology. But we need a sustainable funding source to keep pace with the needs of our students. Both the operating levy and the technology levy will give our students the support they need to be active and engaged learners in an ever-changing world. After 8 years, it's time to consider an upgrade. Learn more about the referendum and remember to vote on or before November 2nd.
Okay, with that, we'll take it to the next slide. And Director Tyne, I'll let you take this one.
Good evening once again. I'd like to just review briefly with you some of the funding facts. First of all, the expiring levy, the operating levy generates about $12 million, and it's going to be expiring at the end of this school year. Second, state funding hasn't kept pace with inflation and are increasing costs. And as you notice, the inflation, the difference between inflation and the amount received or allocated by the state legislature is, there's a gap. That gap is about $600 between the inflation figure and the amount that we receive. That equates to about $5.5 million in revenue that we will not receive because inflation is eating it up. And just a little note, what we're asking for is about equivalent to that $5.5 million. The third is that we've reduced our budget 3 times over the last 8 years. Now, I know that for many of you, that's a big deal. We've decreased our budget at home too. But what this shows us and shows you, I hope, is that we're very conscious about trying to live within our means and making adjustments as we need to make sure that we have the funds needed to serve the kids that we have. So the $7 million in adjustment was to make sure that we don't put ourselves in financial jeopardy. And then because of the pandemic over the last 3 years, we've lost 3% of our students. And that's about 270 to 280 students from the previous year to last year. And that makes a difference because our funding is based on the number of students we serve. So it really does make a huge difference. There are some additional charts that I think Clarissa is going to put up in a minute that I had a couple of notes on. This shows where the money comes from. And the expiring referendum is 10.4% of our general fund, which basically says if you're a family making $50,000 a year, it's like losing $5,200. Or a family with an income of $100,000, it would be like losing $10,400. Now you'll notice only 2% comes in federal aid, but that's going to be changing. In the past year, we've received more in the way of CARES funding or COVID funding, and that will change our federal aid to approximately around 5%. Next slide, please, Clarissa. And the chart that you show here has Roseville on the low end. I want you to know that this chart includes just the operating referendum, capital projects, and debt service. And as you know, we're toward the bottom. And we hope that the change in the levy amount and in the technology levy would put us someplace in the middle. Right now, we'd fall about where in between Roseville and Hastings. But Roseville, and I don't know if Hastings is, but Roseville is going for an additional amount, which would put them up toward the cap, which will increase the amount that they receive per student at an even higher level than we have right now. So I look forward to any questions that you may have concerning the charts, and I'll do my best to answer it. And if we can't do it tonight, we'll make sure we get in touch with you so you can find out what you need to know.
Okay, we will be asking or having 2 questions on our ballot on November 2nd. And question 1 is a replacement levy, so it's a renewal with a slight increase. So $12 million that is currently in place, and we're asking for another 2.7. I'd like to remind people that the current levy that's expiring was put into place for 8 years. We are asking for the max this time for a 10-year length. And so that 2.7 needs to last us through that 10 years. We're asking for what we feel like we really need. We know that it's a tough time for our families and community with COVID, the pandemic, and inflation as well that has hit families. Question 2 is a capital projects technology levy. We are asking 4.7 million on that. This is the first time that we've gone out for this. The vast majority of our metro area districts that surround us already have this in place. And in fact, some are going out asking for more in this category. Currently, we are using 2.8 million for technology out of our general fund. So if this question 2 passes, the 4.7 million, that could possibly free up another 2.8 that we would use to support students in their academic achievement. Question 2, I want to make sure everybody understands, is contingent upon question 1 passing. And so when people go out to vote, they need to understand that. And we did send out flyers and information to all of our community members this past week. So again, question 1 is a renewal with a slight increase, 12 million plus the 2.7. Question 2 is our capital projects tech levy, and that is a dedicated funding source just for technology. And question 2, again, is contingent upon question 1. This request is based on the needs of our students. We know our students are coming in to our schools with more needs than they have before. Looking at the data with our youngest, littlest learners, we're seeing a difference year after year when they're coming in with more needs with the pre-literacy, pre-math, and reading skills. We are also at a deadline with our current levy. It is expiring. This is our last chance, so we do need to go out and ask for renewal. We've had years of inadequate state funding, as Dr. Tyne has explained. Last year was historical, with the state of Minnesota providing the biggest increase that they have for school districts in the last 15 years at 2.45% and a 2%. And we are very thankful for that. But as you can see by the chart that Dr. Tyne showed, it still has not closed that gap with the inflation that we've had. And things are simply costing more. We've also analyzed our district finances. And as many of you know, we keep a 5% fund balance for a rainy day. And it's been said it has been a downpour lately. So things are costing a lot. And then we also conducted 2 community stakeholder feedback surveys last year, before winter break and after winter break, to see what our community was willing to support. And this is where we arrived at with this set of questions that we have. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Cherry.
Thank you, Superintendent Lansfeld. I'm going to just share a little bit more information on question 1. And as Melinda had shared previously, question 1 is on the ballot first. This is our replacement levy. The purpose of this levy is to really maintain quality learning for our students. We are very conservative in the ask in that we are going out for a renewal of our expiring levy and just a little bit more to help us stabilize the district's budget. We need to address that funding gap that comes from the state funding. We know that we've had some enrollment changes, which has created fewer dollars that come into the district, but that enrollment has a big impact on the amount of funding that comes into the district for us to serve our kids. And then most importantly, that rising costs and inflation. We're all seeing that right now. If you go to the gas pumps, you're going to see the rising costs in gas. If you want to purchase materials right now, we know costs are rising. That's the same is true for all of our costs it takes to run the school. So with this replacement levy, it is really focused on stabilizing our school district's budget. We will work to retain our teachers and our support staff to maintain existing programs and services which continue to support the academic achievement for all of our students. With this replacement levy question, the goal is to help stabilize things. This is not a promise of never needing to do a budget cut in the future. Again, these funds are contingent upon enrollment. So we will continue to work to right size our budget. We can't promise that there would not be future budget cuts, but this would significantly reduce or minimize the need for future budget cuts as we look at a 10-year levy. If approved by voters, question number 1 addresses that state funding gap. This would generate an additional $390 per student, or approximately $2.7 million more per year, on top of the $12 million that is currently in our operating levy. And again, that's based on enrollment, so there is a little bit of fluctuation there. But looking at addressing our state funding gap, number 1, and looking at the changes in enrollment, rising costs and inflation, we hope to retain our teachers and support staff. If if the question number 1 does not pass, we would be looking at reducing approximately 100 teachers and other support staff in our schools. This would significantly impact our class sizes, which then would be the reduction in staff. But if it's approved, if it moves forward, we would be able to continue to support the academic achievement for all of our students, maintain those existing programs and services that we've come to love here in Stillwater. We are very adamant about supporting our music programs, our athletic programs, our extracurriculars, and the great academic programs that we're able to offer in our schools. And again, if this question number 1 were approved by our voters, this would minimize the need for any future budget cuts for the next 10 years. And so again, question number 1, if question 1 is not approved by our voters, our local levy, our local referendum would be expired. So that's the $12 million deficit in the 22-23 school year and beyond until a local levy were to pass. So this does have a significant impact on the way our students experience school. This would result in significantly higher class sizes. We would see approximately 10 more students in a classroom. This would be students sitting packed into classrooms. It would reduce the number of teachers and other support staff to support those students. So they would be crammed into classrooms, students would be crammed into classrooms with less adults to provide instructional support and supervision. There would be a significant loss in academic and social emotional interventions. So not just the classroom teachers, we're also talking about other types of academic programs that we have grown to love in our school district. And we are very adamant about providing those personal learning experiences for our students, and we simply would not have the funding or the resources to be able to do that. We also would look at a loss of elective classes, a variety of different specialized programs, such as our gifted and talented education program would be significantly reduced. Our dual language immersion program also would be something that would not be able to continue to be funded. A variety of different arts and athletic opportunities would no longer be available. Again, I can't stress enough how different our district will look if question number 1 does not pass. all of those wonderful things that we know and love in our school community would simply look different. And so that is the information that we want to share today, specific to question 1. And with that, I will turn it over to Director John Perry.
Thank you, Dr. Cherry. When we're talking about the question number 2, the technology levy, this is really in terms of our levy ask for what additional resources we can bring to the school district. So you've probably heard me talk before about the tenets that we employ here with learning technology around regular and reliable devices, the anytime, anywhere learning, and ensuring that all of the technology is fully supported. Anytime you go into a classroom or a learning environment and talk to the teachers or the parents or the kids, you find out how important it is to ensure that the resources that we're providing on a daily basis work the way they're supposed to work, and provide for the learning expectations in a contemporary classroom. And that is a major struggle as costs continue to rise and there is no state or federal funding that really keeps up with that ongoing need. Not to get too far into the weeds of budgeting, but we do receive 2 types of funding that we use for technology. Some of that is capital funding, which lets us buy things like devices, and some of that is operating dollars, which are used for the subscriptions and licenses and all the other things in the technology world around security and curriculum that have either a monthly or an annual fee associated with them. And that's very difficult as those security and curriculum needs go up. It's generally those monthly and annual expenses that go up with it. And in order to account for that, that means the technology fund leans on the general fund in order to provide that support. As a result, currently, the technology department leans on the general fund for about $2.8 million. And so when we look at this technology levy, one of the things that it will do is provide that regular, reliable access. But another thing that it does is it releases that $2.8 million back into the general fund to support other curriculum and classroom instruction. When we get into the question of what happens when this is approved, what will look different, what's the impact going to be, we're talking about a few key areas. I've said before, and I'll say it again, this technology levy is not going to install a NASA space program in Stillwater area public schools. It is really focused on what the needs are in the classroom to meet the struggles of today's teachers and students around a modern learning environment. So that means that teachers and students both have access to devices that let them communicate in the class, at home, anywhere, anytime. Right? We saw this during the pandemic and during inclement weather days before that, the need to make sure that families and classrooms stay connected. It also means upgrading the technology that's in our classrooms today. So many people may not be aware that much of the technology in our classrooms is aging. Many of our classrooms have projectors that are over 10 years old, speaker systems that don't work or are filled with fuzz. And so it becomes increasingly difficult for us to keep up with the repairs and maintenance on systems that are simply out of date. There's a time for repair, and then there's a time for replacement. But systemic upgrades and replacement of classroom technology, the screens, the sound, et cetera, comes to the tune of millions of dollars if you're not engaging in these repairs on an annual basis. And that's a major piece that this technology levy provides the district, is a regular funding source to make sure that we're going after the needed repairs and upgrades to our classrooms on an annual basis and not letting things get so far behind. Our teachers right now, many of them have laptops that are over 7 years old. We recently engaged in the disposal of Chromebooks that are over 5 years old, that are no longer supported by Google, that are no longer supported by the manufacturer, and are no longer supported by the state for testing. In fact, a lot of people don't realize that the devices that we employed during the pandemic, support on those became so bad that we couldn't repair them fast enough to keep them in homes of families. And in the last couple months of school, we actually had to get new devices or used devices to supplement what students were using for their distance learning.
Director Perry, I just want to show people when I'm going around. with these presentations. 2 of these devices came back, and one has a bolt on it and a Band-Aid. And these aren't the only devices that came back this way. And this one has packing tape and duct tape. And my father were still around. Duct tape fixed everything in our household, but they are used. They are well-used devices.
Yeah, and we have a team of people that work really hard to keep these devices working, that embody that vision that students and teachers have regular, reliable access to their resources. But there's a point where you have so much aged technology that the repairs are something that you just can't keep up with anymore, where things are breaking faster than they can be fixed. So what happens if this technology levy isn't approved? We're actually starting to see this now. Technology levels in the district are slipping back to where they were in 2016. And our goal in 2016, which was a big change for the district, was to get enough Chromebooks and an updated infrastructure in place so that students could complete their state mandated MCA testing online in their classrooms. And that was a pretty major feat for the district, but it established kind of the new floor of where the state and much of the country is at, that students test on the same device in their classrooms, not on different devices in different rooms on whatever can be cobbled together, but everybody is assessed in the same learning environment, essentially. And so we accomplished that in 2016, and over the years, through district funds, through PTA funds, grant dollars, basically anywhere we could find technology funding resources, we were able to add more devices to our institutions in order to make sure that there's support in science class. You've got kids working on science projects, collaborating on using technology, taking measurements, coding robots, all kinds of neat stuff throughout the district. But as the technology ages out and Chromebooks age out, well, our Chromebooks were aging out in 5 years. Now there's the hope that they'll last up to 8 years, but we'll see how that plays out. I haven't seen a Chromebook device that would last that long yet. And as a result, we're losing access to those devices and struggling to figure out how can we make sure we have enough devices in our system just to meet the minimum requirement for state testing in the spring. And so that's a real minimalistic view that we're taking of technology without having this kind of funding come in. One really important point I'd like to make about 2016 is that we didn't have the technology funds to pull off what we did in 2016. The board actually provided a one-time allocation from the fund balance to allow that. And so we talked about it in 2016, we're talking about it again today. If we don't have that annual regular funding to support technology, there's a point where the technology stops working and you're going to have to meet our state requirements for assessment and reporting and other things. So some of it is really trying to move us forward, get those classrooms upgraded to where we want a contemporary classroom to be, to look more like many of our neighboring districts that have built new schools or have been able to upgrade and retrofit their old schools. Some of that is just trying to keep up with the minimum of what's required of a school district today. The last point I want to make is that there's a lot changing in the technology security area. So we're starting to get more and more insurance requirements for technology, and which in many ways is a good thing. It's an area that schools and government need to pay a lot more attention to. We're targeted more by cyber threats, and there's training programs we need to put in place. There's management software for patching and vulnerability detection. Our security software needs constant upgrading and has become more expensive. That's our firewall, intrusion detection, endpoint protection. And then there's just the ability to replace obsolescent equipment. And when equipment ages out and loses manufacturer support, it actually becomes a major potential vulnerability in your network. It's not getting those patches anymore and can present a danger. In addition to that, we have ongoing backup costs that continue to rise. And then of course, there's authentication and encryption that we use to protect all of our student data. So it's really quite a bit. The requirements are going up and up, but the funding hasn't kept up. And so we're looking to our community to provide that support. I think we have a video to share that touches on some more of these points.
Stillwater is one of only a few districts without dedicated funding for technology. That makes it a challenge to meet the needs of our kids and teachers. A technology levy would provide all of our students with a device that they can use at home and at school. It would also allow us to upgrade 10-year-old projectors in our classrooms and repair or replace damaged audio systems. The truth is that our classroom technology is aging, and without a sustainable funding source, our classrooms will continue to fall behind what has become a standard for most of our neighboring districts. The last year has shown us that it is really important for students to have universal access to Chromebooks wherever they are. With platforms like Schoology or Seesaw and a device in their hands, students are always connected to their learning. If a student is sick, they wouldn't have to miss out on everything that happens in school. When a child forgets what their homework was in math class, they could just jump online, review the assignment, and even submit it when it's done. A family whose vacation overlaps school days wouldn't have to worry about what their child will miss. A tech levy would ensure our students are always connected to their teachers and each other. They'd be able to ask questions, collaborate on assignments, and stay connected with their learning anytime and anywhere. Stillwater is.
And so as we're looking at our upcoming referendum, both the question 1 and question 2, we look to reinvest in our kids. Our number one priority is to use any of these new funds to improve academic achievement for our students. We do that first by stabilizing our budget and avoiding additional budget cuts. We know that we have class sizes right now that if they were to increase, that would significantly impact our students' ability to achieve at high levels. And so we want to keep those class sizes from growing. We need to support quality learning for all of our students. We specifically look to some of the budget cuts we've had to make in the recent past. And as we were looking at those 3 previous rounds of budget cuts, they've had a significant impact on the outcomes for our students. We have had to cut our professional development and our curriculum budgets. And that's had a significant impact on our literacy achievement scores. Our academics have suffered. We know we need to do better. The previous cuts were pretty significant. We have cut about as far as we can go without directly impacting the classroom. But in a way, these previous cuts have impacted curriculum and development, and that does impact our students' achievement. We know we have curriculum needs as new standards come forward all the time. We're currently just in the tail end of a new literacy adoption that needs continual attention and professional development and support to make sure that we're upholding our curriculum with fidelity. We are embarking on new science standards, which will entail a need for new resources and new curriculum. New professional development to ensure that our teachers are prepared to teach to those standards. We're looking at math and social studies, and these things just keep coming. It is a constant flow. And so as we're looking for that continuous improvement model, we need to make sure that the resources that we're providing to our students, including our teachers' professional growth, keep up with that cycle of improvement. We also look to provide more academic support for our kids who need extra help. We currently have an intervention model that is not able to meet all of the identified learning needs of our students. And we need to enhance that to ensure that it's having the greatest impact on the students who need it. To have a great impact in all of our classrooms and the learning that's needed. And in addition to that, we also know that we need to provide emotional and mental health support for our students. The pandemic has really highlighted this need that our kids come to us in the classroom. They need a little bit of additional support so that they're ready to learn. And this was just so highlighted throughout the pandemic, and it continues. And so additional funds to improve academic achievement also includes the emotional and mental health support for our students. So as we look at reinvesting in our kids, all of this is about focusing on academic achievement and making sure that our students are succeeding.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I think you've heard the reason that what we intend to do with the money, but whenever you talk to your boss about salary adjustment or an increase in the revenue, you have to make your case for it, and you have to show why you think you need the money. I think that's been laid out very aptly by my colleagues. But how much is it going to cost, and how is it going to be paid for? If you take a look at the chart that's in front of you, you'll notice that the highlighted amount is $350,000 with a yellow box around it. That's the estimated average home in Stillwater. Right now on question 1, the cost for that, the programs that we have, is $368 per year. When we receive the positive vote, if we do, that will increase to $445, an annual increase of $77. What the school district has proposed is to make some adjustments in some other levies that we have right now and reduce those by $75. That will lower the amount of the operating referendum that we request from the public, our bosses, by or increase it by $2. And that's 17 cents a month, approximately, a little bit less than that. We're also requesting a capital project improvement driven for technology. And as you know, years ago, it might have been the hammer and the saw, and it might have been handheld computers. Right now, technology is what it's all about in our school district. And that would be an increase of $138 per year. The total added together with the reduction on other levies comes to $140. And that's about $11.50 a month for an average size house. Now, the houses go up and down, and we have homes that are valued at $1 million and probably some in excess of that. That means that the increase for the program that we're proposing on $1 million house would be $426 a year, or $35.50. You'll notice that it equates very comparable to commercial and industrial property, and also apartments in non-homesteaded 2 or more units at the $1 million level. But you can see that as the value of the home goes up, of course, the amount of the tax burden does increase. It's on real market value, and the technology is put against net tax capacity, and they are 2 different things and calculated 2 different ways. But the bottom line is $140 a year. $2 impact on the operating referendum and $138 on the technology levy. If you have any questions, again, I'd be happy to discuss them with you or try to answer them.
Thank you. Just want to share some information on voting and the available polling locations. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the early voting is open now. The early voting hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Saturday, October 30th, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., and Monday, November 1st, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. On election day, November 2nd, polling locations are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can look up your individual polling location at minnesotamnvotes.org, or all of the polling locations are also listed on our website. We did send out a flyer, 2-page flyer with the graph that Director Tyne was just sharing, and a sample ballot. On the back side, all of the polling locations are listed. We did have one polling location change in Bayport from the police department to the fire department, and information was sent out to families that live within that set of boundaries. Also, in-person voting locations: Stillwater, it's the Washington County Government Center; Woodbury, it's RH Stafford Library; Forest Lake. We have Headwaters in Forest Lake Service Center, and Cottage Grove, the Grove Service Center. We are encouraging the early voting because I know myself, I have 5 children, and when they were younger, things would get away from me sometimes during the day with homework, soccer practice, dinner. So if you do think that it's important to vote, please consider going out early for that. We're hearing it takes 5 to 15 minutes at the very most to get through. Okay, and just a quick overview of our levy request. Again, it's November 2nd is the official voting day. There are 2 ballot questions. Question 1 is a replacement to maintain our quality learning that Stillwater is known for, and we are very proud of all of the programs, athletics, the art, the music, everything that we do offer to students. Again, it is a renewal with a slight increase, so it's the $12 million plus the $2.7 million, and this is based on enrollment. To just give you an idea of what this would cost, so just to reiterate what Director Tyne said, the tax impact on a $350,000 home would be 17 cents more per month. Question 2, again, is contingent upon question 1 passing. And this is the first time we've gone out for a capital projects technology levy. 4.7 million is what we're asking for. We currently use 2.8 million out of our general fund, which again, if this passes, would free up some funding for more support. Academic support is our big focus for our kids. And on a $350,000 home, this would mean an additional $11.50 per month. So a total of $11.67 if both questions pass, or just under $12 per month. And with that, Chris, I think we are open for some questions. I will let you facilitate that. If we don't get through all of the questions tonight, people can submit questions and we'll try and get back to everyone that we can. And go ahead.
Thank you, Melinda. We have had some questions come in. We also had some that were submitted ahead of time, so we'll get through. We have just over 15 minutes left of our hour, so we'll get through what we can. And again, as Melinda said, you're certainly welcome to submit your questions online and we will respond there as well. So with that, the first question that we have is, how can charter and non-public schools operate with less money than our public schools?
Okay. I will start off with Director Tyne, just jump in. We do support a lot of those schools in different ways. We do provide staffing services and programming for our English language learners, our special ed students at those schools. We do receive funding for some transportation, but we do support some of that cost. And I'll let you answer some of that as well, Director Tyne.
Yes, tell you, first of all, sometimes there's economy for scale. In other words, a non-public or a charter school, because they are a little bit smaller, they're a little closer to it, plus their costs are going to be less. You have to realize that a public school has expectations to offer an education for every student that shows up at the door. There is not really an option to say, I'm sorry, we're full, or we can't take you, or your needs are too great for us. We're here for every child, no matter their needs, no matter their abilities. When they show up at the door, we're here to do it. And let's be honest about it. Our costs for the teachers that we have and the way we support our community is going to be more than probably some of our charters and our non-publics. And also, when you take a look at our transportation costs and some of the other costs that we have, the infrastructure that we have in place too. Remember, even kids that go to non-public schools have the opportunity to use our programs in the summer. And anytime they decide to leave a non-public or a charter school and show up at our door, we will take them with open arms. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we're ready to do that. There's a cost for that.
Thank you. Next question is, Are the levy dollars being used for anything related to COVID, such as masks or COVID testing?
Well, I could just address that. The governor has put forward some additional dollars, which we have applied for. Dr. Cherry has put together a plan for that, and we're receiving money to pay for the COVID costs. We've also received money earlier for COVID directed expenditures. Now, there could be some individual costs that we have for ongoing staffing that we have in place, such as our health programs or some of our supplies that we'd have even without the COVID problem. But the majority of it is going to be paid. The vast majority of it is going to be paid out of COVID costs or COVID funds that have been allocated by the state and federal government.
I'll just add a little bit to that as well. I've been hearing that there are some questions about the staffing, and we've talked a little bit about that last year when we created 100% online learning for all of our students who had requested that or needed it. We had to hire some additional teachers to staff those positions. We also hired some additional custodians last year for touch point cleaning, ongoing cleaning. We also hired a COVID nurse last year to specifically address handling cases in our schools. So we did do a little bit of additional staffing last year specific to COVID, and we did get COVID dollars to do those things. Those are one-time funds. And I want to just clarify that levy dollars are ongoing dollars. So those are year-to-year expenses. And we staff our schools every year based on enrollment. So in the spring, we set the staffing for the next school year based on our projected enrollments. And so we would not be using these levy dollars to pay for any kind of emergency type of staffing. That all comes from a different fund, a different bucket, and those COVID dollars have really helped out with some of those emergency needs.
Thank you. Quick question. I did have someone ask how many people are on the webinar. We have 63 people that are logged in right now, and I know this is also on YouTube, and my last check was just under 20 people on YouTube. Next question. If technology levy is approved, is the goal to provide computers to every student to take home?
Great question. So yes, part of the technology levy is making sure that every student and staff member has a device. And if I can take a second to expand on that a little bit, I know when it comes to one-to-one technology programs, there's different schools of thought that we've floated around the community for a while, but there's a few points I'd like to make about having this sort of ubiquitous level of access to technology beyond what we've experienced in the pandemic and otherwise. And that's really to talk about the fact that there's a role of technology in education. And its role is not to simply supplement everything that came before it. I've talked about this at board meetings before, and I really believe it. Highly effective use of technology in the classroom is going to do one of a few things. So it's going to radically increase your student engagement. So you're going to have students doing an assignment that's technology enabled, and just as a third party standing at the door, you're going to look in a room and go, wow, the engagement in this room is off the charts. All the kids are fully engaged. And there's different ways that that's achieved, often by meeting different kids at different places, which technology is really good at in providing sort of a customized learning experience for each child. But you'll see that when you look at our classrooms using technology. Technology may also provide a very unique experience. So if you go into maybe like some of our science classes around physics, you'll see students coding robotics. And students are using robotics to learn physics in a very hands-on way that is very different than traditional reading about it in a book. It's hands-on, it's engagement, it's unique, it's using something like robotics that is inherently through a technology lens. You also might see in subjects like math, kids may be coding or programming, or they may be taking an actual programming course. And that's an area I expect our community to look at and say, of course, students are using technology to program. That's what you do on computers. That's a computer task. Or the third way that technology should really be implemented is to improve communication and collaboration. So through technology and platforms like Schoology that we use, parents can always know kind of what's going on in that classroom, how their students are performing, whether assignments are being turned in, what feedback is coming from a teacher. We shouldn't have to wait half a year to get a progress report or to have a conference. The technology really enables the communication between the parent and the teacher, but it's also enabling that communication between the student and the teacher and the student and their peers. And so you get into some of those examples about kids working on homework at night. They're not in isolation. They've got access to Khan Academy videos. They can post to their Schoology page and hear from their classmates or maybe get a response from their teacher. So it should really make sense when people see how technology is being applied. And I think it's worth saying when every kid has a device, there's some things that it's not there for. So in general, it's not there to replace books, right? I still want my third grader sitting on the couch with a paper book in her hands, learning to read. It doesn't replace manipulatives. So there's a lot of like math manipulatives, things that kids put their hands on, kinesthetic learning. Students learn by doing, and you can't just put everything on a computer and make it different. So I hope that through that lens of every student having a device, something we can see is there's certain things that it's very good at, and there's other things that it's not an appropriate replacement for.
Thank you. Okay, next question. I've heard some concerns about test scores. Why should I continue to give the district more money if achievement, specifically literacy, has declined recently?
I'll take that one. That's a one that I've heard a couple of times, which is, I'll answer it a couple of different ways. First, it does take money in order to meet the learning needs of students. And as we've seen some concerns about our test scores, we do need to meet that challenge head on. We need to identify why that's happening and then provide the proper supports to ensure that all of our students are learning. We know that our kids come to us today with higher needs. We need to meet students' pre-literacy skills in the classroom. We need to be able to support the learning needs of those students with their families at home, and that costs a little bit more money. I also just want to talk a little bit about how we measure success and what we're talking about in terms of test scores. I think oftentimes there is a lot of discussion about our MCAs, our Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments. Our current MCAs have been in place for almost 9 years now. And those MCAs, or those standardized tests, are updated every time we have standards changes. And so our district needs to continue to update our curriculum to make sure that we're teaching the students the skills that will help them achieve at high levels on those standardized tests. Our systems need to change in order for the test scores to get better. And with that, that costs a little bit more money. I don't think we're going to see our test scores go up if we have less funding. I think it's quite the opposite, and that's just intuitive. We need to fund our schools in order to have an impact on student achievement.
Thank you. Next question. What will be the checks and balances put into place to control how levy dollars are spent?
One of the unusual things about being a stockholder in a school district, which all of the taxpayers happen to be, and the citizens, is that there is a comprehensive audit performed each and every year. And for the last 15 years, Stillwater, and no credit to me, but to the people that came before me, have received star ratings from an independent council that said the audits are not only accurate and thorough, but they're award winners. The other thing that you'll notice is that all of our information is on the Minnesota Department of Education website. So if anybody wants to see where any dollars have been spent, how much is being spent on administration, how much on busing, how much on, you name it. There's a complete breakdown that's available. Also, the staff here is very open to visiting with you and showing you where all the dollars are spent. We're going to be very, very diligent in making sure that the dollars that are awarded, if awarded, will be used in the appropriate manner and to benefit our kids.
Thank you. So questions keep coming in. I know we're kind of running up against time, and we'll maybe do a few more. Is that okay, Melinda?
We can take a few more.
Okay. Why wasn't this levy put on last year's ballot?
I wish it had been. We wouldn't be up against this deadline. Traditionally, school districts have taken it to the full length until renewal, and we had this in place for 8 years, where the max length of time is 10 years. This time around, because this is a lot of work, we are taking it to the 10-year max, and the philosophy for renewing levies has changed over the years. Now districts are starting to go out earlier. If they have a specific need, they are asking exactly what they need at that time for the kids and for the district. And that's the new philosophy that has been evolving. So, and we know that there will continue to be inflation. We don't know quite what that will look like. We know that we will continue to have volatile enrollment up and down with this pandemic. And we've heard that it's going to take some time to get kids back. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of politics and changes there. So we don't know exactly where we're at, but we will continue to assess our needs. And moving forward, I would encourage our district to look at what we need. And if we need to go out earlier, let's go out earlier and ask for that specific need. And I know White Bear Lake and a few other districts, that's what they've been doing. It's been quite successful. If this does not pass on November 2nd, our next chance would have to have state approval. We could do next fall, I believe, 2 mail-in dates. The first in-person date would be next November 2nd, which it's my understanding, if it fails here and it passes next year, we would still have at least that year gap of the funding not coming in. So it's critical that we go out now, and hopefully we'll change our philosophy a little bit with how we do this.
That's a really good segue. We had a question about the tech levy. When would be the next chance to pass a tech levy if it's not successful in November?
John, I believe that's after January and February might be our first time. It doesn't have as many restrictions as the operating levy, and it's a lot more open, so we could go out sometime after winter break.
Okay, there was a question here about how many of the staff that would be eliminated if the levy is not passed were hired in 2020 because of the pandemic.
I don't, go
I'll
ahead.
add on to that because I talked a little bit about it in a previous question. Our staffing, we do staffing in each year based on our enrollment. And so the staff that were hired in 2020 specific to the pandemic, they were hired in the last school year. And so as we look at any kind of staffing that was hired just specifically to address pandemic needs, this year is those are 1 year only positions. So those wouldn't be continually renewed. So I guess the way that I would answer that question, the way that you asked it, is that would be 0, because that just happens through the staffing cycle.
Okay, we've also had a question about a cut list. You've said cuts are coming regardless of levy outcome. What is on that cut list?
Well, everything would have to be approved by the school board. We know that all of our extra programs, specialty programs would have to be looked at, athletics, the arts. We have mentioned the GATE program, Gifted and Talented Education. That's a specialty program, the Unidos Amigos, dual language program for Spanish at Lake Elmo. All of these programs would need to be looked at. We have a lot of athletics, such as middle school athletics. We know, I'm just pulling things out of a hat. right now, fifth grade band and orchestra, some of these programs, we would really have to take a serious look at them and make some decisions.
And just a reminder that we're talking about $12 million here of
Huge.
what would have to be cut. So it's not just one of those things. It really, these are vast cuts.
Mhm. I've been in the district since 2007. I've been through a number of cuts, and I personally have never experienced anything this large. We've made, as mentioned earlier, 3 cuts totaling $7 million since this current levy was put in place back in 2013. And each time going through those cuts, it was painful, and we've cut and cut and cut. So this would be large scale.
Remember too, that all of our contracts in place with our bargaining units are built on last in, first out. So that means your newest employees will probably be the folks that would be faced with reductions. So it almost takes 2 reductions at the lower end to make up the cost of 1 employee. So it is really very, very difficult. And one thing I want to say is this is an ongoing process that all the departments use. They're always reviewing their budget. They're always taking a look, and they're bringing information to our school board. So our school board's not surprised by any adjustments that need to be made during the year. It's an ongoing process, not just one day or 1 month. It's ongoing.
Please explain how passing the technology levy actually frees up money to spend in classrooms.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So if I can just do a quick rundown of the numbers. The district's current technology budget is 1.3 million. That's split up between those 2 categories, the capital and the operating funds that I discussed earlier. We also spend 1.5 million on staffing for the whole department, for the whole district, for everything, database security, tech support, literally everything. And so that's $2.8 million that we spend out of the general fund today on technology. If the tech levy passes, then the tech levy takes over funding of the learning technology department in its entirety. And so that 2.8 is no longer being pulled from the general fund and provided to the technology department. It goes back where it can support classrooms in other ways.
Okay, Carissa, it's 7:03. We'll take just a couple more questions.
Okay. Let's see. What are some examples of mental health supports for students?
Well, there are a variety of different mental health supports that we currently provide for our students. We contract out for services with mental health therapists. We also provide a variety of emotional and social supports for our students within our buildings. We have student advocates at the elementary level, and then also if we look at that larger role of the school counselor at the secondary level, a piece of their role also is mental health supports. We also provide training for our staff so that they are aware of identifying mental health needs of students and being able to refer those students for additional support. So as we're looking at the kind of the range of needs of our students, we are able to provide those supports both at tier 1, tier 2, and or all of our tiers, really, tier 3.
One thing I want to mention too, Dr. Cherry's pretty modest about this, but the staff development that we have for our teachers, but not only our teachers, but our licensed staff, but also for our custodians, our food service. A lot of times children get that support from another caring adult within that, a para within that in the district. And so staff development plays a big part in that, in preparing our staff to deal with the needs of vulnerable children.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, question. Why don't you cut administrative positions instead of the important employees like teachers and janitors?
Okay, well, first off, if you cut every administrator in the district, that still doesn't come close to the $12 million that we're going to have to cut. We are pretty lean compared to a lot of the districts already. I know when I started here back in 2007, I think I remember just in our teaching and learning or curriculum department, there were 14 to 17 people in that department. I think we got all the way down to 2. We might have 4 or 5 now. That's it. And so we've already made a lot of cuts. And if we are not providing the support that teachers and other staff need, then they're not, they don't have the ability to support the kids the way that they should. We have curriculum review cycles, we have standards, we have our multi-tiered systems of support. We have a lot to do in order to support the staff that need to support our kids. But yeah, that would be a fraction of what would still need to cut.
Just a reminder, every school building is required to have a school principal. All of our elementary schools only have a principal, which is, I would say, very lean in terms of administrative support at the school level. Each of our middle schools, these are large middle schools, have a principal and assistant principal. And again, extremely lean if you look at the role of the school administrator. And at the high school, we have a head principal and 4 assistant principals. So we do operate very lean in terms of administrative support as it is.
My previous district, just for example, had 63 elementary schools, and every single elementary school had an assistant principal. Okay.
Okay, how will families see a benefit if these levies pass? And what about a benefit for community members without children in our district?
Well, go ahead, John.
Can I just touch base on that? As a person, you can tell by the way I look, I'm not a brand new employee. I am to the district, but I want you to know, people without children in school, they're going to benefit from a very well-educated populace. And that's so important. Plus, good school districts increase property values. And usually when you sell your home, when you're my age, you're going to sell it to somebody who's probably going to have children or looking for a school district to invest in and to be involved with. So that's one of the benefits that you're going to receive there. And I'm going to turn the other part of that question over to our curriculum person or our superintendent.
Okay, I'll let you go first, Dr. Cherry.
I'm gonna share, great schools create great communities. People need schools that they're proud of, that they are connected to. And here in Stillwater, we have great public schools and everyone's proud to be a pony. On top of having great schools and doing wonderful things for our K-12 plus students, we also offer a variety of really robust community education programs that engages our larger community audience without children in our schools. And so I would say that Stillwater Area Public Schools provides opportunities for all residents in our district.
And I just want to say, attended the homecoming football game a few weeks ago, and you get embedded in doing the work and in this position, you try and get out to the schools, and I'd sure like to do it more, and that's a goal of mine. But just being at homecoming, you have a big sea of red, community members, thousands of people, and I've worked from one end of the district to the other, and I had families from everywhere that were there that night, and to hear the kids and letting me know what they've been accomplishing and doing and what colleges they're going to be going to. It's phenomenal to hear the parents, and so thankful for the support that the teachers and other staff have provided. That evening just completely filled my bucket, and that's the why. That's the why we're here. It's a community. This is a community effort. Our school district, I would like to think, is the heart and soul of our community. And when the schools are healthy, the community is healthy. And when we work together, we all do better. And this right now is a community effort. So with that, I think our time is up. We're 10 minutes past. Carissa, again, this is recorded. It will be out on YouTube. And appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to this. And again, our goal was to educate and inform the public about what this means to our schools, our families, and community members. With that, thank you.